Hey guys, Chris here with another filler video. I was originally going to do something pinball related for today's filler, but I kind of feel like I still need to get some more experience and learn a bit more about pinball in general before I can really comment on the subject and do it justice. So instead, let's talk about one of the most infamous games of all time, E.T. the Extraterrestrial for the Atari 2600. Now, a lot of people call this the worst video game of all time, to the point where James Rolfe of AVGN fame is making an entire movie centered around the thing. But to be perfectly honest, this isn't a terrible game, and in fact, it's not actually that bad once you know how to play it. But it is a rushed game for sure, with some bugs, and that doesn't help when the gameplay itself is extremely confusing if you don't have the manual or understand what's going on. Once you do know how to play the game, it's a slightly buggy, tolerable thing that is actually quite impressive given the 5.5 weeks spent making it. Yeah, most games take years to make, and even back in the 80s, the average video game took several months at the least. Making a game in 1982 in under 6 weeks? That in and of itself is challenging enough, much less the huge pressure on top of that to make something dynamic that could capture the spirit of one of the most successful movies of all time. Granted, this doesn't make the game any better, just more impressive from a technical standpoint. So, let's talk about how you actually play this thing. Before you start the game, you have to set up your difficulty. Now, there's 3 different game modes, labeled 1, 2, and 3, selected with the Game Select switch on the console. New players should always start with Game Mode 3 since this disables the enemies. Game Mode 1 has both an FBI agent and a scientist to worry about, while Game Mode 2 disables a scientist but leaves the FBI agent in. You also want to check the difficulty switches on the console since the right difficulty switch affects how fast the enemies move, and the left difficulty switch supposedly determines if the mothership can land when there's other people around or not, but I've tested with both the switch up and down, and as far as I can tell, there absolutely cannot be anyone on screen when the mothership lands or you're not getting picked up. The goal of the game is to get E.T. off of the planet, which is a 3-step process. Step 1, find 3 phone pieces to assemble a transmitter. Step 2, find the appropriate spot in the game to use the transmitter. Step 3, find the landing site and be there when the mothership lands. The game world is actually split into 6 sections, arranged like a cube. The top of the cube is the landing field where you both start and end the game from. The bottom of the cube is the town where the human characters in the game reside. And the middle 4 sections are basically parts of the forest with pits in them. You can go to any section of the forest from the top or bottom screens, while walking off of the left or right sides of the sections with the pits will just bring you to the next or previous one in the sequence. In order to find phone pieces, you need to fall down pits. Now, this is the part of the game that most people despise because there's tons of pits, and you lose a good chunk of energy when you fall down one. So what are you supposed to do, fall down every single pit? Well, no, because that would indeed be very stupid. What you need to do is use E.T.'s powers to find the correct pits to fall down. You see that icon at the top of the screen that keeps changing? Randomly at the start of every game, various sections of each screen you can visit have icons designated to them indicating powers E.T. can use while he's in those spots. To use a power, you simply stay still and press the fire button. Pressing the fire button while E.T. is moving is how he runs, using up lots more energy but moving much faster. The question mark ability will scan the present screen for a phone piece, and if one is present, it will flash yellow to indicate which pit it's in. Now, the important thing to note here is that even if 2 or all 3 phone pieces are on the same screen, you can only detect one at a time. So once you collect a piece, it's often a good idea to go back to the question mark spot and try again to see if more pieces are present. Now, speaking of pieces, sometimes you'll see a dot in the middle of the screen. These are Reese's Pieces candies, which you can collect. Whenever you find a spot where the symbol up top looks like a circle with a dot in the middle, this indicates that E.T. can eat one of his Reese's Pieces to regain some energy. There's also a spot you can call Elliot from, the character in the movie who befriends E.T. Now, Elliot will then come in and take all of E.T.'s Reese's Pieces, and if you give Elliot 9 pieces in total, the next time you see Elliot, he'll give you a phone piece if you're missing one. The 2 bad guys you need to be wary of are the scientist and the FBI agent. Now, the scientist isn't too terrible as he just delays the game by taking E.T. back to the city, where you'll promptly escape and go back to finding phone pieces. The FBI agent, on the other hand, is extremely annoying, as touching him will cause E.T. to lose all of his Reese's Pieces as well as a phone piece. However, if E.T. doesn't have any of these items, then the FBI agent does nothing at all. So it can sometimes be a good idea to scout the icons out at the start of the game so that you can save yourself if the FBI agent starts closing in. There's two ways to get away from the bad guys, either by using the arrow icons to immediately switch to different nearby screens, or there's also a power indicated by the picture of a building, which quite frankly looks more like the Roman numeral 3, but in any case, using this power will send any bad guys on the screen towards the bottom and back to the building they reside in. Though occasionally their movement glitches up and they get stuck at the bottom of the screen. When this happens, it can be a good opportunity to scout out the screen for more icons and phone pieces, since due to hardware limitations, only one human can be on screen at a time. Speaking of glitches though, there's a major bug with the pits that often leads to lots of swearing at the game, and it has to do with trying to get out of them. Now, many players will often try to escape from a pit only to immediately fall back in. This only happens when you try to escape a pit from an upper area, because the hit detection on the Atari 2600 is actually pixel perfect. But when ET is done floating out of the pit, the sprite shifts downwards by a pixel, and often immediately makes contact with the pit again in the process, triggering ET to fall back down. Thus, the trick to ensuring you never trigger this bug is to never leave a pit from its north side. Once you escape the pit screen and are back to an overhead view, go left, right, or down. Any direction except up. Once you have all the phone pieces, the next goal is to find the spot on the map you can call the mothership from. As with the other icons, this spot is random every time you play, but unlike the other icons, which appear on every screen, the mothership icon only appears on one screen, so finding it can be a bit tricky. It isn't always going to be one of the pit screens either, as the mothership call can be down in the town too, and while I think it can show up in the landing area, I've never actually seen it show up there. However, neither the FBI agent nor the scientist can be present when you make the call, otherwise it won't work. Elliot can be present for the call, but I think the game crashes if Elliot's present during the landing. Once you call the mothership, a countdown timer shows up, and you not only have to go back to the landing area, but you have to find the exact spot you're going to be picked up from, indicated with a special targeting icon. Once you find the spot, you don't have to do anything but wait. Though because no humans can be present in order to be picked up, it's extremely important to know where the building icon is in the landing field, so you can trigger it if anyone threatens you. Mind you, it's somewhat inconsequential if the FBI agent steals your phone part, so long as you make it off okay. Otherwise, you'd have to go hunting for phone parts again. Once you've been picked up is when you actually score points, based on how much energy you had left, the number of Reese's Pieces you gave to Elliot, and a bonus which is calculated in some way, I'm not too sure how though. Then the whole thing starts all over again, and the idea is to do this as many times as you can until Elliot can't bring you back to life anymore and you run out of energy and the game finally ends. And that's all there is to this game. As far as Atari 2600 games go, it actually has quite a bit to it, but it's both buggy and confusing, especially if you don't have the manual, or in my case, access to FAQs. I may be playing it emulated right now, but it's one of the 60-something carts I actually have for my real Atari 2600. And while it's not typically a game I go back to very often, I feel once you know how to play it, it's not really that bad, it's just frustrating and buggy. It's a below average game overall, but impressive technically given the limitations of the 2600's hardware and the fact that it was made in under 2 months' time. Anywho, that's all for today's filler video, so stay tuned for the next episode of Ancient DOS Games, episode 139, going up on Saturday, June 7th, where we're going to take a look at a first-person shooter that came with a random level generator. I am not even kidding, so make sure you send your guesses to adg@pixelships.com and stay tuned to see for yourself just how creative the design of this game was.